Wrong house. Those two words cut deeper than the December wind as my father began closing the door in my face. Christmas lights twinkled mockingly behind him, illuminating the home I grew up in but never truly belonged to. I stood on the porch, snowflakes melting on my designer coat, holding a gift bag that suddenly felt ridiculous in my hands. My name is Mallory Grant, and I'm 30 years old. 10 years ago, I left this small Ohio town with nothing but a scholarship and determination. Today, I returned with something my father desperately needed, though he didn't know it yet. Have you ever been rejected by the very people who are supposed to love you unconditionally? That crushing feeling when family looks at you like you're a stranger? Today's story is about family betrayal, unexpected success, and the sweetest form of revenge, the kind that saves rather than destroys. If this resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of family karma. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Growing up in Milton, Ohio, meant living in a town where gossip traveled faster than internet service. Our house on Maple Street wasn't fancy, but my father, Richard Grant, maintained it with the same rigid pride he applied to everything in his life. He worked at the Heartland steel mill, just like his father before him, wearing his blue-collar identity like a badge of honor. Real work, he'd say, his calloused hands wrapped around a beer can, is something you can feel in your muscles at the end of the day. In our family hierarchy, my brother Tyler stood at the top. 6 years older than me, he was everything Dad wanted in a son: athletically gifted, traditionally masculine, and unquestioningly loyal. Friday nights were sacred in our house, with everyone required to attend Tyler's football games. When he was named MVP his senior year, Dad displayed the trophy in the living room where it still sits today. Dusty but prominent. My sister Denise came next in the pecking order. 4 years my senior, she was the diplomat of the family, always smoothing things over when tensions rose. She wasn't as openly favored as Tyler, but she fit into Dad's worldview. She cheered at Tyler's games, dated the right boys, and after high school, she married her sweetheart Jason and settled into a job at the local bank. Then there was me, the afterthought, the misfit, the square peg. While Tyler threw footballs and Denise practiced cheerleading routines, I was in my room teaching myself HTML from library books or sketching designs for websites that existed only in my imagination. She's always got her nose in a book or staring at that computer screen, I'd overhear Dad complaining to Mom. It's not natural for a girl her age. My mother, Linda, was the only one who seemed to understand me. She'd slip magazines about technology into my room or buy me coding books for Christmas, careful to do so when Dad wasn't looking. "You've got a special mind, Mallory," she'd whisper, smoothing my hair. "Don't let anyone dim your light." But Mom's support had limits. When Dad's voice raised, she retreated. When decisions needed to be made, his word was final. Our house operated under Richard Grant's rule, and anyone who challenged that learned quickly that dissent came with consequences. I learned this lesson at 16 when the letter arrived from the Women in Technology Summer Institute at Northwestern University. I'd applied in secret, spending nights perfecting my application after everyone was asleep. When the thick acceptance package arrived with news of a partial scholarship, I felt like my life was finally beginning. That night at dinner, I couldn't contain my excitement. Mom had made meatloaf, Dad's favorite, and everyone was in a good mood. Tyler had just been promoted at the mill where he'd followed Dad, and Denise had announced she was expecting her first child. "I have news too," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "I got accepted to a summer program for computer science at Northwestern." The table went quiet. Mom's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Chicago?" Dad said finally, cutting another piece of meatloaf. "What for?" "It's a really prestigious program," I explained, pulling the brochure from my pocket. "Only 50 girls from across the country get in. They teach coding, app development, even some business skills." "App development?" Dad interrupted, saying the words like they tasted bad. "What's wrong with working at Miller's Diner like Denise did? You'd make good tips, learn some responsibility." "Richard," Mom ventured, "this sounds like a wonderful opportunity." 6 weeks in Chicago learning to make phone games isn't an opportunity. It's a waste of time," Dad said firmly. "You're not going, Mallory?" End of discussion. But for once, it wasn't the end. Something in me snapped that night. Maybe it was years of being overlooked, or maybe it was finally seeing a path to a different future. I already accepted, I said, my voice shaking but determined. They gave me a scholarship, and I've been saving from babysitting. I don't need your permission. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad's face turned the color of brick as he set down his fork with deliberate slowness. As long as you live under my roof, you'll do as I say, he said, each word sharp as broken glass. And I say you're not going. I looked around the table, hoping for support. Tyler studied his plate. Denise gave me a sympathetic glance but remained silent. Only Mom met my eyes, her expression torn between pride and fear. Then maybe I shouldn't live under your roof anymore, I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. Dad laughed, a dismissive sound that made me feel small. And where would you go? You're 16 with no job and no sense. But I went anyway. My high school computer teacher, Miss Winters, had a sister in Chicago who offered me her spare room for the summer. I left a note, packed a suitcase, and caught a bus while everyone was at work. For 6 weeks, I lived and breathed technology, surrounded by girls who thought like me, who saw possibilities in code that others couldn't understand. When I returned home in August, everything had changed. My room remained untouched, but I was treated like a guest. No, worse than a guest. Guests were welcomed. I was tolerated. Hope you learned your lesson, Dad said when I walked through the door, not bothering to look up from his newspaper. It was the most he would say to me for weeks. The next 2 years of high school were a cold war. I focused on maintaining perfect grades, building my college applications, and counting the days until graduation. Dad made it clear he wouldn't contribute a dime to any education that wasn't at the local community college. You want to chase pipe dreams in California, you can pay for it yourself, he told me when my acceptance letter from Berkeley arrived with a substantial but not complete scholarship. The day after graduation, I packed everything I could fit into 2 suitcases. Mom cried at the door, pressing spending money into my hand that I knew she'd hidden from Dad. He'll come around, she whispered, though neither of us believed it. He just doesn't understand people like you, people who see the future before it happens. Tyler gave me an awkward side hug. Take care of yourself, squirt, he said, the childhood nickname almost breaking my composure. Denise, holding her infant son, kissed my cheek. Call when you're settled? Dad stood in the driveway, arms crossed, watching as I loaded my bags into Ms. Winter's car. She'd offered to drive me to the airport, a kindness I hadn't expected. You're making a mistake, Dad called out as I opened the car door. You'll come crawling back when you realize the real world isn't impressed by your computer games. I paused, one foot in the car, suddenly desperate for some word of encouragement, some small acknowledgement that he'd miss me. Goodbye, Dad, I said when nothing came. He turned and walked back into the house without another word. California was everything Ohio wasn't. Vibrant, diverse, pulsing with innovation and opportunity. But it was also brutally expensive and competitive. I lived in a tiny apartment with 3 other students, took maximum course loads to finish early, and worked part-time jobs that fit around my classes. Some nights I ate ramen for dinner and cried into my textbooks, wondering if Dad was right. But I never called home to say so. Mom called weekly at first, then monthly as she ran out of news to share. Tyler had been promoted again. Denise was pregnant with her 2nd child. Dad was the same as always. Do you ever talk about me? I asked once. The pause before Mom's answer told me everything. He keeps the graduation announcement I sent him in his dresser drawer, she said finally. I found it when I was putting away laundry. He doesn't know I know. It wasn't much, but I clung to it on my hardest days. Have you ever worked so hard to prove someone wrong that you almost forget what you're really fighting for? Drop a comment if you've ever found yourself succeeding out of spite, only to realize you've built something meaningful along the way. By senior year, my hard work had paid off. I'd landed an internship at a financial technology startup in San Francisco, and they offered me a full-time position before I even graduated. The salary wasn't impressive, but the equity options were, something Dad would never understand. I called home with my news, hoping finally for some acknowledgement. Mom answered, her voice tired. That's wonderful, honey, she said, but something was off. What's wrong, Mom? Nothing, just a bug that's going around, she assured me. Everyone's fine. Your father's working overtime with the mill cutting back shifts. I offered to help, to send money home, but Mom refused. We're managing just fine, she insisted. I graduated with honors, no family in attendance. My roommates cheered for me and took photos that I posted online, tagging my siblings who responded with likes but no comments. Dad, of course, wasn't on social media. The next 3 years were a blur of 80-hour work weeks, ramen noodles replaced by quick salads eaten at my desk, and an apartment barely nicer than my college housing. The startup was growing, but so was the pressure. I missed 2 Christmases, sending gifts that received polite thank you texts from Mom, but silence from Dad. Then everything changed. Our company was acquired by one of the tech giants, and suddenly my worthless-seeming equity was worth 7 figures. At 25, I became financially independent overnight. I paid off my student loans, bought a condo in the Mission District, and took 2 weeks off, my first real break in years. During those 2 weeks, I realized something. I didn't want to work for someone else anymore. I had ideas of my own, solutions for small businesses struggling with financial management. With my payout as seed money, I launched GrantFin, a platform designed to democratize financial tools previously available only to large corporations. The first year was brutal, worse than college and my early career combined. I remortgaged my condo to make payroll, worked around the clock, and lost 15 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. But slowly, things turned around. Small businesses loved our product. Investors started calling. By year 2, we were profitable. By year 3, I was being featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 and fielding acquisition offers that made my previous payout look like pocket change. My team had grown to 50 people, and our offices overlooked the Bay Bridge. I'd made it, by any objective measure. But success is a cold companion on Christmas Eve. Each year, I'd see the photos on social media. Tyler and his wife with their 3 boys, Denise and Jason with their growing family, all gathered around the tree in my parents' living room. Dad, gray now but still barrel-chested and proud at the head of the table. Mom, looking increasingly frail but smiling for the camera. Everyone together, no empty chair acknowledging my absence. I told myself it didn't matter. I hosted lavish Christmas parties for my employees, took exotic vacations, bought myself extravagant gifts. But at night, in my designer apartment with its perfect view, I'd find myself scrolling through those family photos, a knot in my throat that no amount of success could dissolve. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening in March and I was working late as usual. Mallory? Mom's voice sounded small and very far away. I need to see you, honey. I was on a plane the next morning. Mom met me at the Columbus airport, and I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight, her clothes hanging from a frame that used to be sturdy like mine. Her hair, once rich brown like my own, had thinned and grayed. Cancer, she said simply when we were in the car. Stage 3, I start treatment next week. I moved into a hotel near my parents' house and extended my stay indefinitely. My company could run without me for a while. My mother couldn't. I drove her to appointments, sat with her through chemotherapy, and tried to make peace with my family. Tyler was cordial but distant, our childhood connections severed by years and miles. Denise was warmer, inviting me to dinner with her family, her children regarding me with curious eyes. The aunt they'd heard about but never really known. Dad was the same as always, maybe even more hardened. He acknowledged my presence with curt nods, but we rarely spoke directly. The one time I tried to discuss Mom's treatment options, suggesting a specialist in Cleveland I'd researched, he cut me off. We don't need your California doctors or your tech money, he said. We've managed just fine without you for 10 years. Mom's treatment wasn't working. By summer, the cancer had spread. By fall, hospice nurses were visiting daily. I extended my leave from work indefinitely, promoting my COO to acting CEO. Some things were more important than business. Mom died on a Tuesday, just like the Tuesday she'd called me. It was peaceful, they said, but death is never really peaceful for those left behind. At the funeral, I stood apart from my family, a black-clad stranger among blood relatives. Neighbors and church friends hugged Tyler and Denise, offered condolences to Dad, then glanced at me with curious eyes. That's the youngest one, I heard someone whisper. The one who moved to California. computer person or something. After the service, there was a reception at the house. I helped Denise arrange food brought by neighbors, aware of Dad watching me from his armchair, his expression unreadable. When most of the guests had left, I approached him, offering a cup of coffee. I thought I might stay a few more days, I said, to help sort through Mom's things. Dad took the coffee without thanks. Do what you want, you always have. That night, as I boxed up Mom's clothes for donation, I found a small leather journal tucked in her bedside table. Inside, in her neat handwriting, were notes about my life, clippings of articles mentioning my company, printouts of my social media posts, even the graduation announcement I'd sent years ago. She'd been following my career all along, keeping a record Dad never knew about. In the back of the journal was a letter addressed to me, dated just after her diagnosis. "My dearest Mallory," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. There are things you should know." The letter revealed what Mom had hidden from me during our calls. The steel mill had been struggling for years. There had been layoffs, and Dad had been forced into early retirement 2 years ago. Too proud to take unemployment, he'd pieced together part-time work, but fallen behind on bills. The house I'd grown up in, was in danger of foreclosure. He would never admit it, Mom wrote. But he needs help, not just financially, but to find his way back to the father he used to be before pride hardened his heart. I've always believed that you two are more alike than different, both stubborn, both brilliant in your own ways. Please try once more to reach him for my sake. I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words. Then I made some calls. It took some investigating, but I learned that my parents' mortgage had been sold to a private investment group that specialized in distressed debt. They had already begun foreclosure proceedings. Through a business contact, I arranged a meeting with the investment group's principal. "I want to buy the mortgage," I told him. "At full value, no discount." He seemed surprised. "May I ask why? These are typically distressed assets." "It's personal," I said. "Using a shell company to keep my name off the paperwork, I purchased my father's mortgage outright. I didn't tell anyone, not Tyler, not Denise, and certainly not Dad. I returned to California, threw myself back into work, and waited. The months after Mom's death were a blur of meetings, product launches, and sleepless nights. My company continued to grow, but I felt hollow inside. When Thanksgiving came, I didn't go home, sending gift baskets instead. No one questioned my absence. But as Christmas approached, I couldn't stay away. Mom's letter haunted me. She'd asked for one thing, to try again with Dad. I would honor that request, even if it meant another rejection. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I booked a hotel, rented a car, and arrived on Christmas Eve with a carefully chosen gift and the mortgage documents in my bag. Snow was falling gently as I pulled up to the house, the colored lights on the porch, casting rainbow patterns on the white lawn. For a moment, I sat in the car, gathering courage. Through the window, I could see the familiar Christmas tree in the corner of the living room, presents already arranged beneath it. I saw Tyler's boys racing around the room, Denise setting the table, and Dad in his usual chair, looking older and more tired than when I'd last seen him. Taking a deep breath, I approached the front door and knocked. Long seconds passed before the door swung open. Dad stood there, his expression shifting from anticipation to shock to something harder when he recognized me. "Wrong house," he said flatly, beginning to close the door. I placed my hand on the door, stopping it. "Actually, Dad, I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." He hesitated, then stepped back reluctantly, allowing me inside. The familiar smells of pine, cinnamon, and Mom's traditional roast beef recipe hit me all at once, nearly buckling my knees with nostalgia. Tyler looked up from where he was assembling a toy train, surprise evident on his face. "Mallory? We didn't know you were coming." Denise hurried over, giving me an awkward hug. "You should have told us. We would have set a place." "She's not staying," Dad interrupted, his voice firm. "Just dropping by, isn't that right?" I set down my bag and coat, making it clear I wasn't going anywhere. "Actually, I came to talk about something important, something that affects all of us, but especially you, Dad." His face hardened. "If this is about selling the house, I've already told the bank." "It's not about selling," I said. "It's about saving it." The room went silent. Even the children seemed to sense the tension, their play quieting to curious observation. "What do you mean saving it?" Tyler asked, standing up. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder of documents. "I know about the mortgage, Dad. I know you're 6 months behind and facing foreclosure. I know you turned down help from Tyler and Denise because you're too proud." Dad's face flushed dark red. "You have no right." "Maybe not," I agreed. "But I have these." I held up the papers. The deed to this house, the mortgage note, and the lien release, all signed and ready to be filed. Dad snatched the papers from my hand, his eyes scanning them rapidly, confusion replacing anger. "What is this? Evergreen Holdings? I don't understand." "Evergreen Holdings bought your mortgage from the bank 3 months ago," I explained, my heart pounding. "They could have foreclosed immediately, but they didn't." "Why?" Denise asked, moving closer. I took a deep breath. "Because I asked them not to. Because Evergreen Holdings is me, Dad. I own your mortgage now." The silence that followed was absolute. Dad's hands trembled as he held the papers, his eyes moving back and forth across the documents as if searching for a trick, a lie, something to disprove what I was saying. "That's not possible," he finally said, his voice barely audible. "You can't." "I can," I said firmly. "And I did. The house isn't going into foreclosure. You don't owe the bank anything anymore. You only owe me." Tyler stepped forward, his expression a mix of awe and confusion. "Mallory, how could you afford? My company is valued at 9 figures now," I said simply. This was not difficult, financially speaking. Dad sank slowly into his chair, the papers clutched in his hand. For a moment, he looked small, diminished, nothing like the towering figure who had dominated my childhood. "Why?" he asked, looking up at me. "Why would you do this after everything?" I moved closer, kneeling beside his chair so we were eye to eye. "Because Mom asked me to try one more time. Because this house holds all the memories I have of her. And because despite everything, you're still my father." Something broke in Dad then. Some dam that had held back emotions for decades. His face crumpled, and to my shock, tears began to stream down his weathered cheeks. In all my life I had never seen my father cry. "I was wrong," he said, his voice cracking. "About everything. About you. I was so damn wrong, Mallory. If you're watching this and you've ever longed for validation from someone who hurt you, you know exactly what I felt in that moment." Hit subscribe if you want to see more stories about that moment when everything changes. I didn't know what to say. For years I'd imagined a dozen scenarios where Dad admitted he was wrong, but now that it was happening, I felt no triumph, only a profound sadness for all the wasted years. "I never understood you," Dad continued, wiping roughly at his eyes. "You were so different from what I knew, from what I expected. I was afraid you'd leave us behind, and then I pushed you away so hard that you did." Tyler moved to Dad's side, placing a hand on his shoulder. Denise joined us, completing the family circle that had been broken for so long. "The papers," I said gently, "include a deed transfer. The house will be put in all our names, yours, mine, Tyler's, and Denise's. It belongs to all of us now, together." Dad shook his head in disbelief. "You'd do that? After how I treated you?" "Mom would have wanted it this way," I said simply. Dad stood then, slowly, like a man much older than his 63 years. He looked at me for a long moment, then did something he hadn't done since I was a small child. He opened his arms. I stepped into his embrace, feeling the familiar strength that had once seemed so intimidating, now somehow fragile. We stood there, the prodigal daughter and the humbled father, surrounded by the family that was finally, truly complete. "Stay for dinner," Dad said when we finally broke apart. "Stay for Christmas. Hell, stay as long as you want. This is your home too." That night, for the first time in a decade, I sat at the family dinner table. We talked, really talked, about Mom, about the years we'd missed, about my company and Dad's struggles. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward pauses, old hurts that resurfaced, moments when old patterns threatened to reemerge. But it was a beginning. After dinner, Dad pulled me aside, into his small home office where he'd once paid bills and worried about making ends meet. "I kept track, he said, opening a drawer in his desk. He pulled out a folder, worn and filled with papers. Inside were printouts, news articles about my company, press releases, the Forbes feature. "Mom's journal," I whispered, recognizing the same materials. Dad nodded. "She showed me, after you left that last time, after the funeral. Said I needed to see what my daughter had become. His voice broke. I was so damn proud, Mallory. Too proud to admit I'd been wrong. That Christmas marked a new chapter for our family. I didn't move back to Ohio, but I visited more often. Dad came to California in the spring, marveling at my offices, meeting my team, finally understanding the world I'd built. Tyler's oldest boy showed an interest in computers, and I became his long-distance mentor. Denise and I reconnected over weekly video calls. The family photos on social media now included an empty chair at holidays when I couldn't make it. A place saved, a presence acknowledged. As for Dad and me, we're still learning how to be father and daughter. Some conversations are still difficult. Some wounds haven't fully healed. But we're trying, and that's more than we had before. The mortgage papers remain in Dad's desk drawer, a reminder not of debt, but of reconciliation. The house that once felt like a prison to me has become a bridge, connecting the family I was born into with the woman I've become. They say the best revenge is living well. But I've learned that true vindication isn't about getting even, it's about rising above, about extending the hand that others once refused to offer you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to walk away, but to come back stronger, to offer help instead of hurt, to build bridges where walls once stood. If this story touched you, like and subscribe for more tales of family forgiveness and finding your way home, whatever and wherever home might be for you. Remember, success may open doors, but compassion unlocks hearts. And in the end, that's the key that truly matters.